When we talk about goods and services, we imagine that the market provides these things as people demand them. But there are two types of goods that are problematic for free markets to provide. We call them public goods and common resources. To understand public goods and common resources, we begin by talking about two attributes that all goods either have or don't have. The attributes are exclusivity and rivalry. We say that a good is rival if one person's consumption of a unit of this good diminishes other people's ability to consume the same unit at the same time. For example, a seat on a bus is rival. If one person's sitting in it, this diminishes the ability of someone else to sit in it at the same time. A computer is rival. When one person uses it, this diminishes the ability of someone else to use it at the same time. A pair of shoes, a theater ticket are also rival goods. Examples of non-rival goods are a fireworks display. I can watch a fireworks display and you can watch the same fireworks display at the same time, and my watching it does not diminish your ability to watch it. Now you can imagine that if there are lots of people standing around and it's hard to get a good vantage point to observe the fireworks, you could argue then that maybe this starts to look like a rival good. But in fact, what's rival in this example isn't the fireworks, it's the land on which you're standing, the vantage point. This is the rival good. If I'm standing in one particularly good spot, you can't stand in that same spot at the same time. So it's the spot from which you're viewing the fireworks that is rival, not the fireworks themselves. Other examples of non-rival goods are live music, broadcast television shows, and the light from a street light. In each of these cases, you can consume the good and I can consume the same good at the same time without diminishing your ability to consume the good. In addition to being either rival or non-rival, every good or service can also be exclusive or non-exclusive. Exclusive goods are goods for which it is possible to prevent someone from consuming. Now this raises a question, why would we want to prevent someone from consuming a good or service? And the answer is, if the person hasn't paid for it, we don't want them consuming it. So the attribute of exclusivity becomes very important for producers who are looking to sell a product and make some profit from this. If you cannot prevent the consumer from consuming the product, it becomes very difficult to charge the consumer for the product. So examples of exclusive goods are virtually anything you would buy at a store. Beer, pizza, clothes, shoes are all exclusive goods. Non-exclusive goods are goods for which it is either impossible or very costly to prevent the consumer from consuming. For example, city streets. To prevent you from consuming a city street, that is driving down it or walking along the sidewalk, I must erect barriers and charge tolls at every intersection, at every point at which someone might exit a building and enter the street or come in from outside the city. There must be toll booths to prevent you from using the streets unless you paid for them. This becomes incredibly costly, so for all practical purposes, city streets are non-exclusive. Similarly, recorded music tends to be non-exclusive. If I have a recording on a CD, I can copy this CD and give it to someone else, and we can both be listening to the same copy of the music at the same point in time. The music itself becomes a non-exclusive good. Now notice something, the CD is exclusive. I can prevent you from consuming a CD by putting a cash register here and saying if you don't pay for it, you can't have it. While the CD is exclusive, the recorded music that is on it is non-exclusive. I can copy this readily and hand it to other people, and the original performer cannot stop me from doing this. Now, yes, we can put copyrights in place, but notice what happens. The copyright is now a legal response to the fact that the good, the recorded music, is non-exclusive. This is a way that we might attempt to force exclusivity upon this essentially non-exclusive good. So imagine now a set of goods, a beach, city streets, seats on a bus, computers, pay TV, software, broadcast TV, and fireworks. The beach, the city streets, the seats on the bus, the computers are all rival goods. As you consume a unit of this good, it makes it more difficult for me to consume the same unit of the good. Now there are exceptions to this. If you have a beach and there's nobody on the beach or a city street and nobody's driving on it, the good starts to look non-rival. But as people begin to use this thing, the beach starts to fill up with people, the city street starts to fill up with cars, it now begins to look rival. As one more person comes in and uses the beach or drives on the streets, it makes it more difficult for other people to use the beach or to drive on the streets. So these four goods are, for practical purposes, rival. Now consider exclusive goods. Seats on a bus, computers, pay TV, and software are all exclusive goods. I can prevent you from consuming these things. Now, software falls somewhat in the exclusive category and somewhat outside, depending on how the software is engineered. If I design codes into the software such that you cannot run it unless I can verify that you've paid for the thing, the software becomes exclusive. Alternatively, if it has some encryption that's easy to break or some keys that are easily obtained, then the software starts to look very non-exclusive. So the exclusivity of the software depends on how the software itself is engineered. Let's assume for the moment, when we talk about software, we're talking about software that has some reasonable amount of encryption or protection on it, such that you can't run it unless you've actually paid for the thing. Two goods that are neither rival nor exclusive are broadcast television and fireworks. Broadcast television is broadcast to everyone. As long as you have a television, you can see the programming. Goods that fall in the center, that are both rival and exclusive, are private goods. These are goods that we normally think about when we talk about demand and supply of goods and services. Goods that are rival but non-exclusive, we call common resources. Goods that are exclusive but non-rival are called club goods, and goods that are neither rival nor exclusive are public goods. Now, the economic problem arises mostly when we talk about common resources and public goods. The problem with a common resource is, in a free market environment, the free market will tend to overconsume the common resource because there's no way to stop people from consuming the good, and as more people consume the good, they diminish the ability of others to consume it. So when we talk about environmental degradation, frequently what we're actually talking about is a common resource problem. There is some resource like fresh water or clean air or forests that are being overused. Now, not all goods that we think of as common resources are really common resources. Often the problem has to do not with the good itself, but how we structure the property rights surrounding the good. For example, if the property rights to fresh water are not well defined, the market will act as if the fresh water is a common resource. So in a free market environment, the fresh water will tend to be overused. However, the real problem here isn't the fresh water, the problem is a lack of property rights. If we define property rights for the water, so we say that the people who live upstream own the water, therefore anyone downstream who wants to take water out of the river must pay some fee to the people upstream that's mutually negotiated in some market fashion. By defining the property rights in this way, we take what is otherwise a common resource and now make it a private good. Now, this arrangement isn't always possible. For example, it can become very difficult to define ownership of clean air. So clean air tends to look like a common resource all the time. The problem with public goods is, in a free market environment, the market will tend to underproduce the public good. Once the thing is produced, anyone can consume it, and therefore the producer has little incentive to produce the product. Now, there are exceptions to this as well. Markets have found ways around the public good problem by doing things like providing recorded music for very low price or even free, because the recorded music entices people to come to a live concert, and the performers make most of their money on the live concert admission and the t-shirts and swag that are sold as part of the concert. So in this way, the market has taken this good that would otherwise be just a purely public good, the recorded music, and actually made it a source of potential revenue for another truly private good, that is, the live performance. Similarly, broadcast television is a purely public good. The thing is broadcast and anybody can see it who has a television. The market has dealt with this by bundling advertising into the broadcast television. So while the broadcast television program itself is a public good, the advertising slot within it is a private good. Producers can now sell the advertising space as a standard private good, bundled in with this product that goes out to everyone as a public good. So there are ways the markets have found around the public good and common resource problems. This suggests further a proper role for government in the economy. If it is the case that the market, for whatever reason, cannot find a way to define property rights well enough to get around a common resource problem, or if the market is unable to find a way to bundle public goods with private goods such that the public goods will be produced, then a possible role for government is in taxing and providing these public goods, or alternatively in regulating the consumption of the common resource. What's important, however, is that the government be turned to as a last resort. If the market can find a way to provide the public good or to self-regulate the consumption of the common resource, we get a better outcome than if the government steps in and provides the good or regulates the common resource itself. The reason for this is that the government doesn't know what the proper quantity of public good to provide is, nor does it know what the proper consumption of the common resource is. If the market is able to figure these things out for itself, it's best that we let the market do so. When the market proves that it can't, then this is a possible role for government intervention.